Carl Jung, the master explorer of the human soul, made a discovery so disturbing that it changes how you must look at your own life, not by examining your enemies, but by turning your gaze to the people sitting right next to you, the ones you call your friends. He found that the most dangerous person in your life is almost never a declared foe. The real threat, the one that can truly dismantle your spirit, is a silent predator. A predator hiding in plain sight, smiling at your jokes, patting you on the back, and whispering words of support while their soul quietly hopes you fail. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever shared a piece of exciting news, a new dream, a new relationship with a close friend, only to walk away from the conversation feeling smaller? The excitement you felt has been replaced by a subtle, creeping anxiety. Their words were supportive, but their energy felt like a cold hand squeezing your heart. This is the person whose advice always seems to be a perfectly rational argument for why you should play it safe, why you should lower your expectations, why your dream is just a little too big. They frame their negativity as concern, their envy as practicality, and because you trust them, because you love them, you start to believe it. You start to believe you are the problem, that you're being naive or reckless or arrogant. This feeling of being drained, of being confused and filled with a self-doubt that wasn't there before, that is not your imagination. It is a warning. It is your intuition screaming that you are in the presence of a psychological predator. Jung's work gives us the language for what we have always felt in our bones. He identified this person not as a monster, but as something far more tragic and dangerous. A carrier of an unlived life, someone whose own failures and fears have turned them into an unconscious saboteur of anyone who dares to shine. Today, I will reveal Jung's most unsettling discovery about this silent predator among your friends. I'm going to give you the psychological tools to see past the mask of loyalty and identify the subtle, almost invisible signs of their toxic influence. And most importantly, I will show you the one strategy Jung prescribed to protect your soul, to reclaim your energy and your light before it's too late. Because allowing your potential to be stolen by someone you trust is a tragedy from which some people never recover. It's time to wake up. To understand how this predator operates, we have to travel back in time, into the quiet, wood-paneled consulting room of Carl Jung in Zurich. The story that unlocked this disturbing pattern is buried in his clinical notes. It wasn't a case of psychosis or hysteria that caught his attention, but something far more common, far more silent. A patient, a gifted painter with a fire in his soul, came to him utterly broken. He was plagued by a mysterious creative paralysis, a fog of self-doubt so thick he could no longer even lift his brush. He felt worthless, a fraud, and he couldn't understand why. On the surface, his life seemed fine. In fact, he had what everyone considered a priceless asset, a devoted best friend. This friend was his most vocal supporter, his biggest cheerleader in public. He would praise the artist's talent to anyone who would listen, organizing gatherings to showcase his early work, always the first to applaud. He was the perfect picture of loyalty. But as Jung listened, week after week, he began to notice a chilling, almost invisible pattern. The artist's deepest moments of despair, the days his creative well ran completely dry, almost always followed a meeting with this devoted friend. Jung asked the artist to recount their conversations. The friend would say things like, "This new piece is brilliant, truly. I just worry that it's so personal. Are you sure you want to expose yourself like that to the critics?" He would offer helpful critiques that were, in reality, perfectly disguised seeds of doubt, each one a tiny, precise incision into the artist's confidence. He would express deep concern about the artist's ambition, framing it as a dangerous path to burnout and disappointment. "I just don't want to see you get hurt," he'd say, his face a mask of sincere care. He was a master of sabotage disguised as love. And then Jung saw it. The moment of chilling clarity. He wasn't treating a simple creative block. He was witnessing a slow, methodical assassination of a human soul, a form of psychological vampirism so subtle the victim doesn't even see the teeth marks. The friend wasn't a friend at all. He was what Jung would come to identify as a shadow carrier. An individual so disconnected from their own dreams, so haunted by their own unlived potential, that their unconscious mind had a single, desperate mission: to project that failure, that darkness, onto the one person whose light reminded them of their own emptiness. The artist's success was not a joy to be shared. It was a painful, unbearable mirror, and the friend's unconscious had decided that if he couldn't shine, he would make damn sure to extinguish the light next to him. What the artist was experiencing wasn't just bad luck or a string of unfortunate conversations. Jung realized he was documenting a fundamental, dangerous mechanism of the human psyche. He called this phenomenon negative shadow projection within intimacy. This isn't the simple projection we cast onto our enemies, where we paint them as villains to justify our own anger. No, this is a far more insidious and venomous process, because it operates under the sacred cover of trust and love. It's a poison administered by the one person you've given the antidote to. Jung had famously written, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment than the unlived life of the parent." But in this case, he saw with terrifying clarity that this principle extends with devastating force to our closest friendships. When a friend has given up on their own potential, when they have buried their dreams under layers of cynicism and fear, your success doesn't inspire them. It accuses them. Your courage becomes a painful, glaring mirror reflecting their own cowardice. Your light doesn't just illuminate your path, it casts a harsh spotlight on the darkness of their own stagnation. And here is the truly tragic part. This friend doesn't consciously want to harm you. If you accused them, they would be genuinely horrified, and their denial would be completely sincere. This is not a conscious act. It is a desperate, reflexive survival mechanism of a starving ego. Their unconscious mind, a wounded and bitter creature in the dungeon of their soul, sees your light, feels its warmth, and instinctively, desperately tries to dim it. Not to be cruel, but to make its own darkness more bearable. They become a psychological black hole, a vortex of quiet desperation. And without knowing it, you have become their primary source of energy, your potential the fuel they consume to feel a little less empty. They are not just stealing your joy. They are feeding on the very essence of your becoming. So how do you spot this silent predator? How do you identify a threat that wears the face of a friend? Jung understood that the shadow doesn't announce itself with a roar. It whispers. It operates in the subtle nuances of conversation, in the gestures that feel just slightly off. These are the 5 unmistakable signs. See them not as accusations, but as a diagnostic checklist for the health of your own soul. Sign number 1, the backhanded compliment. This is their signature weapon. They praise you, but in a way that subtly undermines your achievement and plants a seed of anxiety. They'll say, "Wow, congratulations on the promotion. That's amazing. I would never want that much stress and responsibility. I value my freedom too much." It sounds like a compliment, but the subtext is clear. Your success is a burden, a trap. They are reframing your victory as a loss, making you question the very thing you just celebrated. Sign number 2, enthusiastic discouragement. They appear to be your biggest supporter, but their advice is always, consistently, an argument for caution. You'll share a bold new idea, and they'll respond with, "I love that, that's so you. But have you really thought about the risks? The market is so competitive right now. I just don't want to see you get your hopes up and be disappointed." They frame their own fear as being realistic to protect you, but what they are actually doing is projecting their own limitations onto you. They are building a cage of practicality around your dream and handing you the key, calling it wisdom. Sign number 3, the gossip monger disguised as a confidant. They create an illusion of deep intimacy by sharing private concerns about mutual friends. They'll say, "I'm only telling you this because I trust you," and then proceed to dissect someone else's failures or mistakes. But as Jung noted, this is never about trust. It's a test. The person who gossips to you will inevitably gossip about you. They are gathering information, mapping your social circle, and most importantly, normalizing betrayal under the guise of a shared secret. Sign number 4, the subtle saboteur. This is where the unconscious shadow begins to physically leak out. They will conveniently forget to pass on an important phone message. They will be unavoidably late to an event where you needed their support. They might accidentally spill a drink on your important documents right before a big presentation. Jung called these symptomatic actions. They are not random accidents. They are the physical manifestations of a deep, unconscious wish to see you stumble. Their conscious mind will have a perfect excuse, but their shadow just accomplished its mission. And finally, the most crucial sign, sign number 5, your own feeling of exhaustion. Forget everything else I've said. This is the only sign you truly need. How do you feel after you interact with them? Do you feel energized, inspired, and seen? Or do you feel drained, confused, anxious, and inexplicably bad about yourself? That feeling is your intuition. It is your soul's early warning system, screaming a truth that your conscious mind, bound by a misplaced sense of loyalty, is desperately trying to ignore. Trust that feeling. It knows who is a radiator and who is a drain. So what do? You've recognized the signs. You feel that cold dread of realization that one of your closest friends might be a silent predator. The immediate human impulse is to confront them, to lay out all the evidence, to demand an explanation, to force them to see the damage they've caused. But according to Jung, this is the absolute worst thing you can do. Confronting a shadow projector, especially one who is unconscious of their own behavior, is like shouting at a mirror. It doesn't change the reflection. It only makes them deny harder, become more defensive, and force their manipulative tactics even further underground, making them more subtle and more dangerous. Jung's solution was not one of war, but of wisdom. It wasn't about a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet, powerful realignment of your own reality. He called this method conscious differentiation and boundary realignment. It's a protocol for protecting your soul, and it happens in 3 silent strategic phases. Phase 1, recognition without accusation. This is the most important step, and it happens entirely inside of you. You simply see the pattern. You acknowledge it. You name it for what it is. A shadow projection born of their pain, not a reflection of your worth. You don't need to prove it to them. You don't need them to agree. You don't need an apology. You simply withdraw your belief in their distorted version of reality. This act of internal recognition is the first step to taking your power back. It is for you, not for them. Phase 2, the information diet. A predator cannot hunt without information. The shadow feeds on your dreams, your fears, your ambitions, and your insecurities. So, you must stop feeding it. This doesn't mean you become cold or hostile. You simply become boring. When they ask about your big project, you give vague, uninteresting answers. It's going fine. When they pry about your new relationship, you offer nothing juicy. We're happy. You gradually, gently, reduce the amount of personal, emotionally charged information you share. You stop giving them the fuel their shadow craves. And phase 3, strategic distance. This is the final crucial step. You slowly, almost imperceptibly, increase the time between your interactions. You become busy. You don't answer texts immediately. You can't make it to every single get-together. This is not a dramatic, tear-filled breakup. It is a slow, quiet, dignified withdrawal. As Jung noted, the shadow needs engagement to survive. It needs a surface to project onto. By creating distance, you are not punishing them. You are simply removing the canvas. You are letting the connection fade naturally, giving their shadow nothing to latch onto, until it is forced to turn elsewhere to find its reflection. When you begin this process of quiet withdrawal, something that can only be described as magical starts to happen. It's not loud or sudden. It's a slow dawn. The fog of self-doubt that has clouded your mind for years begins to lift, almost imperceptibly at first. Your energy, which you had forgotten was even missing, starts to seep back into your life. You wake up in the morning with a clarity you haven't felt since before the friendship began. Your creativity, which had been blocked and stifled, suddenly unblocks. Ideas flow, motivation returns. You realize with a profound and liberating shock that you were never the problem. You weren't lazy or untalented or unworthy. You were simply living in the wrong psychic environment, breathing toxic air that you had mistaken for your own atmosphere. And as your own light begins to shine brighter, the universe responds. You start attracting authentic connections. You meet people who genuinely celebrate your successes, whose eyes light up when you share good news. They aren't threatened by your light because they are in touch with their own. They ask questions not to find weakness, but to understand your passion. For the first time, you experience what a healthy, supportive friendship actually feels like. You become what Jung called an individuated person, someone so fully anchored in their own reality, so firmly rooted in their own self-worth, that you become functionally immune to the shadow projections of others. Their subtle poisons can no longer find purchase in your soul. You finally learn one of the most profound truths of a well-lived life, that the highest form of self-love is to curate your inner circle with the same sacred care you would a beautiful, fragile garden. You learn that not everyone who shows up at the gate deserves access. Not everyone who calls themselves a friend is a friend to your spirit. And protecting your energy isn't selfish. It is the most fundamental act of self-preservation. It is the only way your soul can ever truly blossom. If you have ever felt the chilling presence of a silent predator in your life, if this story has echoed in the quiet, wounded places of your own heart, know this: you are not alone, and you are not crazy. Millions of people are walking through life right now, slowly having their spirit drained by someone they love. It is one of the most common and unspoken tragedies of the human experience. By recognizing it, you have already taken the first step toward your own liberation. Reclaim your power of perception. Write in the comments, "I trust my intuition." It's a declaration to yourself and a signal to others in this community that we will no longer silence that wise, protective voice within. The world is full of hidden psychological dynamics, forces that shape our lives without our conscious permission. If you are ready to stop being a victim of these unconscious forces and start becoming a conscious creator of your own reality, subscribe for more of Jung's profound insights. It's time to learn the rules of the game so you can finally play it with power and with wisdom. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.